Hello, this is John. Popping in quick before we start the episode just to say that Antichrist is a very intense film with some very graphic depictions of a lot of stuff. As a result, Pri and I talk pretty frankly about those things in this episode. And if that's not something you want to listen to, no hard feelings. We understand. If you want to carry on, enjoy the episode. That I have to pat ourselves on the back. That Big Brother joke was quality. Big Brother joke.
I'm just sad I couldn't hear more of your rendition of what Mark Big Brother Zuckerberg would sound like when he refuses to notice.
I don't know. I can't do it. This is a problem. You can't really quote.
Wait. What happens when he doesn't notice, Congresswoman?
Hold on.
She wants his attention, but like...
Congresswoman, my vision of the future is a boot stamping on a human face forever. Yeah.
Also, just that was a direct quote from the book. Congresswoman.
Yeah.
And baby, you nailed it. It's great.
Here we go. Record.
Oh no.
That's my DJ sounds.
Oh no. Cut all that shit out.
Yep. I will definitely cut that out. That was awful.
Hey, John.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. You know what?
What?
I'm really excited to talk about the perks of multiple property ownership.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Why?
Just in a silly goose romance film that we're talking about today.
Yeah. I mean, you've already clicked on this episode and seen the title, and just so everyone knows, we're not doing Sex and the City again. We're doing the film Antichrist. Yeah.
The real Antichrist.
Yeah. We're not doing Tucker Carlson's new show after he's been fired from Fox News. We're doing that. It's actually a film called Antichrist.
Yeah. Much calmer than what reality usually is.
Yeah. Is it just a chill, getting back to nature, kicking it with your girl?
Just a silly goose.
Just
cabin in the woods.
throw on Antichrist and blaze all night. Yeah, I mean, I would like to say right off the top, a very, very strong content warning. This might be the most disturbing film we might ever do.
Yeah, I think we've peaked at this one, and in terms of graphic content.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to say we peaked last episode.
Oh, you would Sex and the City?
Yeah, like in content-wise. But this movie, yeah, like short of genocide, this movie basically has everything in it. So if you are squeamish or disturbed easily, don't watch it. And even if you are, maybe don't watch it. It's a fucked up movie.
Hey, there's a lot of genocide coming up in this film as well. So it covers all its bases. Very biblical.
Were you aware of this movie when it came out?
No, God, no.
So what's your experience with coming to this film?
When I first saw it, I think I was just about to leave for Scotland. So this was early 2010s, around that area, around that point in time. And I was like, okay, this will get me ready for a good, rainy weather, looks atmospheric. Ooh, art house. I like a good spooky cinema.
Ooh, European forests.
Yeah. And it's like, cool. Main characters don't have names. They're just he and she. So it's, it's academic girly meets Green Goblin. What's not to love?
Did you know anything about the movie, though? Like, out of the context surrounding the film?
No, I was hoping for jump scares and murder and
you just kind of
fear.
saw, like, horror, and you were like, I like horror.
That's exactly it. I went in thinking this might be like The Exorcist, but upside down.
Did you know much about Lars von Trier?
No. This was
you weren't a Trier head?
I was not a Trier head then. Yeah. My first introduction to him was through Antichrist.
Mine too, actually. At the time, although I heard about this movie and heard about von Trier through like the controversy that followed this film around and how it was received at the like Cannes Film Festival and stuff like that.
It was on all those controversial internet lists of never watch this movie ever again, or scariest movie that you will never leave your brain.
It was like
clickbaity.
Sort of. And I was saying to my friend earlier today when we were chatting that it's like, it's arguably one of possibly the most disturbing film by like a mainstream well-known film director, you know?
Oh yeah.
Like Von Trier, he's not like as well known, and he's not like a huge director, but in the world of international cinema, he's like a big deal, you know? And if you're getting into cinema in a more like more than cursory enjoyment for it, his name will come up eventually. Like, he's been nominated for Academy Awards. Like, you know, you get to hear about him. We've referenced him previously. We talked about Nymphomaniac slightly, because our boy Shia is in Nymphomaniac. But like, I had never heard of him. I was we would have been 19, so I would have been 19 at the time when it came out.
Yeah.
And this was like my first introduction to him, and I tried to find it, and I didn't see it until maybe around the same time you did.
Like a year after it came out or so, right? A year or two.
I watched it when I went on exchange to a country with lax pirating laws, and I pirated tons of shit, and watched this movie as one of them. And I thought it was really good.
I mean, that's the reason it made me want to see it again now, even though I knew the kind of content that this movie possesses. I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
Outside of those 30 seconds of gut-wrenching cinema, I will be so keen to watch it again. And I mean,
let's just say this movie is memorable. You will know you've seen this movie.
Yeah, there is no confusing this for any other psychological thriller or horror.
It's like, it's technically just, it's like masterful technical film.
Yes.
It's almost a technical masterpiece, in my opinion. I think it's an incredibly competent film, and yet I can't say like you should check it out for that, because
can never loosely recommend it.
It's so rife with graphic violence and shocking scenes that it's just hard to watch. It's
a pretty demented vision.
I think so.
Of what but it's so much more than just someone's imagination of what grief would look like, or of what, you know, terror or sadness and how it manifests itself in people's minds. This feels like a real thing that certain people might think and inflict upon themselves. So to me, it doesn't feel like, oh, it's just some shit that happens in movies. I see Antichrist and I'm like, yep, that tracks. There may well be people who feel this way and act this way because they don't know how else to cope with this type of grief.
You know what I think? I genuinely think this movie is I think that it's a cinematic representation of what anxiety and depression feel like.
Yeah.
'Cause
palpable.
It just, even like a cursory glance at Wikipedia will tell you that Lars von Trier was like cripplingly depressed prior to making this film, and he was that continued up through the making of this movie.
Yeah.
And he has, I believe, at Cannes, he joked that this was his most personal movie, and I honestly don't think that was really a joke. Yeah. I think this feels like the guy felt like his head was just shaking about with these visions of things, and this is what came out. And other than that, I wrote this down, and I wanted to ask you, I don't think this film means anything
other than depression.
Yeah, I actually think that this is a personal movie.
Yeah.
It barely has like a story. It barely has character development. And I just think it's like a refined vision of anxiety and depression.
Yeah.
And on top of that, people have ascribed a lot of meaning to it, both negative and positive, that I just don't believe is real.
Yeah.
That's my personal vibe from it. What do you think? Like,
I fully agree. Now that we've seen the movie from start to finish, And there is a moment of doubt on why the mother character, she reacts the way she does. Without any, I guess, should we get into the plot? Just because I don't want to spoil it ahead of time. But ideally, just a one line summary of this is that a man and a woman are married, and while they're having sex, a baby falls out the window.
Their young child.
Child who's 1 or 2 and falls to his death. So she naturally goes into this catatonic stupor for a while, this like deep depression, which she's not able to climb out of. There are moments where I feel like before they even introduce this in the character that she already exhibits postpartum depression syndromes. Maybe she wanted the child to die. That is where I'm not sure, where it's like, is it psychosis? Is it more than depression? Is it some kind of illness? I don't know.
The film never gives you an answer. It never gives you an answer, and it would be kind of like ridiculous to expect one from a movie like this.
Yeah. But regardless of whatever her intentions are, however she thinks about this child and herself, there is no like biblical element of like, oh, is she the devil or the Antichrist? No, it is pure depression, and it just manifests in this way where her thoughts are riddled with just tar, basically.
Yeah, like it is. It's really interesting. It's interesting that you say that, because have you seen Melancholia?
No. I've not seen the Depression trilogy. I think I've only seen Antichrist way too many times.
There's only so much time in your life to watch Nymphomaniac, which is 5.5 hours long. Don't get me wrong, though. I think Nymphomaniac's actually a very good movie, but it's a real project. Like it's like a real vision of this thing I find it just so obscure and weird. But I was like, Von Trier, the thing is, he is so talented. And Melancholia is a lot more digestible, which I think is why it got nominated for Academy Awards. But Melancholia, I think there's a scene in it. There's nothing to really spoil about Melancholia, so
Fair.
I'll tell you now. And if anyone hasn't seen it and you're up for a kind of bleak, dark ride into the mind of someone, Melancholia is a very good movie. But there's a scene in it where Kirsten Dunst, who's suffering from chronic depression as well, which is where the name comes from, Charlotte Gainsbourg, who plays her sister, she cooks her favorite meal, and then she comes down and eats it, and Kirsten Dunst like chews it a couple of seconds and then like spits it back on her plate, and she starts to cry, and she says it just tastes like ashes, which I think was like, that is one of like the truest depictions of what depression can feel like, and listeners out there might have experienced this before. I know I have, where you're just like, it's that, but that one scene I think of all the time because it's such a clear and distinct vision that I related to very strongly. Antichrist, on the other hand, feels like a chaos, like a fucking chaotic version of that. That brings in all of these feelings of like, with Charlotte Gainsbourg's character, it brings in all these feelings of like grief, depression, rage, psychosis, all of these things that don't just feel like one thing, but ultimately they are just this like shaking jumble of feeling all the time. And her performance is both like absolutely mental and I don't mean that in like a stigmatizing way, but she's just so out of her mind in certain parts, and also so clear in the feeling,
it's so intentional.
Like
there's not a moment missed.
She's such a fucking, and not to take anything away from Willem Dafoe, but I want to talk about his kind of character later. But like Gainsbourg's just like her, I don't know, it's just like, it's a combination of being like kind of well written and well performed that she is really good at.
And at that point, you don't even need to know the names of the characters, right? You don't need to know the backstory. You don't need to know her childhood. Nothing. Everything she does from the point that she's introduced till the point that the main, whatever the climax that happens, the incident that makes her the way she is, all of it makes sense in a chronological order. You don't need a flashback or anything like that. It's just, she's a goddamn force. It was, you had to peel your eyes off of her face at some point to like not pay attention. It's hard not to look at her. Regardless of how, sad or terrifying she seems in the moment.
I had two interesting quotes that I could have
we can cut
said
that out.
earlier. I just, to go back on the idea of von Trier's like depression in making this film. There was in one of the articles I read, this Guardian article, they talked to various people and kind of like they gave small blurbs on this movie and what the experience was of like seeing it.
Yeah.
And so there was one from a woman named Joanna Bork, who is a professor of history at Birkbeck College in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at me like you don't know her, but there's no reason you should. She's
Old Joe? Oh my God. Yeah.
Old Joe? What's she saying? What's she up to?
doing?
What's Joe been up to? Watching Antichrist. She says, Von Trier has admitted that of all his films, Antichrist comes closest to a scream, quote unquote. It exposes us to an untamed, erotic, and aggressive aesthetic without redemption. It jolts us out of passive voyeurism and in despair leaves us crying over cruel fate, which I thought was a really interesting thing that I felt close to. Yeah.
I mean, I resonate with that scream, but without redemption, there's total redemption in the movie.
I don't know if there is, though.
You don't find that she feels like she's able to experience all the, sick thoughts that she wants to experience? You don't think she portrays that well enough to be like, okay, I got it out of my system. What's left but to die? And she does.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
You think if she had lived, that would be redemption?
I don't know if I don't know if redemption really matters.
Okay.
That's the thing. You're doing this. I feel so scatterbrained because like there's so much to say about this film. Yeah, like
that's a solid quote though. Damn, that really distills the general feeling of once you walk out of the theater. That's exactly it.
I've got another one. A woman named Gillian Waring, who just artist. That's all it said in this profile. So she said, "This is a visceral film. I rarely come out of films feeling that I've experienced anything of life. But Antichrist shows you how depression, dislocation, and desperation feel."
Yeah.
That was the quote I wanted to say earlier.
Yeah.
Because that is what that's what I relate to. And that's kind of like what I think of when I think of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I don't think it really resonates as a horror film for people.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of not. Unless a horror is the kind of the horror of being.
It's like a psychological horror.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be a horror that's a jump scare or that, that you stew on for like 3 hours and then you forget about it. This shit stays with you for 14 years after you've seen it.
much like our other favorite fellow Dane, the Neon Demon director.
Yeah.
Like the Neon Demon is classified as a horror by many people, but it's really not.
No.
But it's because people don't really know where to classify these movies.
That's exactly it.
So Defoe's character, I want to back up. I want to talk about Defoe's character, but I also want to point out. So Von Trier makes this movie, right, and comes out at Cannes. It gets applauded. It gets booed. People walk out. There's rumors that people like fainted. They always rumor that when there's something disturbing. This movie was released in 2009, just so for context. Apparently, the press conference for Von Trier was like a fucking total gong show because like some journalists were like legit just angry about this film, and then lots of journalists were like, this is the only movie I fucking cared about at this festival. Like this is like the only movie I can't stop thinking about. I actually read a Guardian article, or was it Guardian? It was someone. I read an article where someone was like, this was literally the only movie I could remember for days at this festival.
Well, yeah, because it has shocking contents that are not seen in typical horror movies. We're used to gore. We're used to violence.
But this is really something different.
Yeah, but because of one or two scenes and not the content of the entire film itself. It's just that those two scenes, those 30 seconds are so polarizing that you're either for or against it. There is no gray area of like, oh, I see the art in this movie, or oh, I see the director's vision. It's straight up, this made me want to puke my guts up.
Yeah.
And there are trauma movies that do that. There are the Saw films or Hostage films or whatever.
Hostels comes to mind. Yeah.
And okay, it's okay to
torture
watch
porn.
Torture porn, right?
Torture porn.
It's fine to see someone peel their nails off, but if it goes anywhere else to your private parts, for example, that's a goddamn no-no, because
that's something different.
That's some biblical shit that you don't want to see.
That's what I mean by like okay, so films like torture porn, rape and revenge flicks, those really kind of like violent, intense movies. Like Wes Craven was a big pioneer of them, a great filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe those have a place in cinema art. I don't think that there's really, and people have made really, really disturbing, messed up movies.
Yeah.
The difference here is that like Von Trier is kind of seen as like this artist with a lot of like integrity and stuff, not to take away anything from all of these people who've made these movies, but like French extremism and things like that. But like you come to Von Trier and all of a sudden he's made this movie that you're just like, what the fuck? And so I think people ascribe an outsized meaning to it,
Yeah.
which I think is giving it a lot of credit. But then also people like, I read some stuff where people were like, this movie is just, it's over the top, it's misogynistic.
Mm-hmm.
And I one of the most obscene reviews I read of it was someone was like, it should never have been made, and I judge Willem Dafoe and Charlotte Gainsbourg for being excited about making it. And it's kind of like, that is that like to me kind of borders on like artistic censorship.
Well, that's exactly it.
You
right?
know.
It's like what are jokes and what are not.
Yeah.
What is permissible to talk about and what is not.
And I honestly think that there was some calls of being like, this movie is like incredibly misogynistic, and I totally disagree.
Mm-hmm.
People who call it misogynistic are actually conflating a very, very good depiction of misogyny with the film being misogynistic, and those aren't the same things.
Right.
And that's where I want to get to Defoe's character.
Mm-hmm.
As I've seen this a couple of times now, his creepy, paternalistic idea of how to treat his wife
Yeah.
is an incredible depiction of misogyny.
It's fantastically
It's
well done.
so eerie.
Yes.
And once you start to think of it that way, once you get over all the crazy gore and violence,
Yeah.
the scenes in the first half of the film, when he insists on treating her, you're just like, no, dude, no.
Don't
you
do it."
should not do this.
Yeah. Because he's a psychiatrist. And so he takes
shouldn't
on...
treat his he says it in the fucking movie.
Yeah.
Once that kind of clicked for me, I was just kind of like, I don't think of this film as a misogynistic picture, you know? Yeah. And also those, like, we talked about like just dismissing it on grounds of that, I just think is wrong, you know?
And at no point in the movie does it hide the fact that he's not a good husband. That he's pretty disconnected from his wife outside of the first scene where they're passionately making love and then their child dies. But as soon as that incident happens and he takes on his wife as the patient, there's a line that she says, you've always been distant from me, so very distant. I was never I never interested you until now that I'm your patient.
Yeah.
Right? And there's so much disdain in her voice. And you could argue that it's coming from a place of grief and anger and all of that stuff that happened because of the kid dying. But it wouldn't be out of place if it wasn't like, oh yeah, I kind of see that. Because it's not like they made a case for him being a great husband.
Also, too, so that thing that you just said is really interesting because, like, Willem Dafoe's character's form of grief is to take on a completely different project, which is to manage his wife's grief.
Right.
And
to not acknowledge his own.
That is really insulting, like to a person. And the other thing too is like, before they even go to the cabin, the movie I think makes a really good point of being like, this guy can't handle what is happening to her.
No.
And yet he just, as like a big dumb patriarchal man, is just like, I gotta keep doing it and it's like, dude, you cannot fucking handle this.
No, and he doesn't even.
As a professional, you just can't handle it.
He's not even a good professional. He doesn't even have his own rules.
Clearly
that he
not.
to.
Yeah.
Because in one scene, literally, and this is like 10 seconds apart. One scene, he says, "Oh, you and we can't have sex," when she forces herself on him and she wants to kiss him. And she wants some kind of reaction from him. He pushes her away. He says, you can't sleep with your therapist, right? You can't sleep with your doctor. And then the next scene, she goes into the toilet. She has a fit of rage. She bangs her head on the toilet. And at that point, to calm her down, he has sex with her.
Yeah, it's...
My guy, you're not a good doctor.
Dude, it is. And I don't know, like, for anyone brave enough to go watch this movie before or after we talk about it, I really... now that me and you are talking about it too, like, I really feel like it's just such a good it's something to, like, to put it in the parlance of today. It's just like a very well set depiction of like just toxic masculinity, you know, and it makes me uncomfortable to think. You know, 2009 is a different time back then. You know, there was Barack Obama was president and foxes could talk, and like, but now I'm just kind of like, I think it's uncharitable if people were like, oh, this is a misogynistic horror movie.
Yeah.
Because I just don't think it is. I really don't. And that also, like, I'm biased because, as I said earlier, like, I don't really think the film means anything.
No.
You know?
And it doesn't hide the fact that the character, the guy himself, is kind of a misogynist, right? The way he portrays himself and his toxicity, that is not something that they're hiding from the audience. Everybody watching this knows at some point that, bro, you need to grieve, but not like in a way that you're treating your wife.
Yeah.
Now that your child is dead.
Yeah.
So at no point is the audience fooled by, I don't know. Well, clearly not, because some of the audience.
They shouldn't be. They shouldn't be. I think too, like because like I said, like I had heard of this movie, like through just controversy at the time, and I think that people were reacting in the time in a way when you see a movie that, to be honest, like, what can you expect, right? Like, you can't really expect what's going to happen in this film until you actually see it. And even like Lars von Trier has, like, you know, he's made disturbing movies before, but nothing really like this, I don't think. And yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
I think that's why a lot of people couldn't take away this movie as a horror, because maybe they felt duped by the fact that this was meant to be art house. So they went in expecting something, you know, calm, like Hereditary by Ari Aster.
Yeah.
We just can't stop murdering babies.
Famously chill movie.
We just can't. We love to see a head get cut off.
Yeah.
Yeah, but hey, whoa, fucking, you can't drop that shit on me, man. I'm still healing. But yeah, I think that's why so much of the reaction is that this isn't a scary film. This is a scarring film. And that is not what they want. They didn't want to go to like a reverse therapy.
I also think that, like, I kind of think it's rare for Lars von Trier is, like, he's a preeminent filmmaker who makes, like, in many cases, but I think especially this film, it feels like actually transgressive. In like, it's actually, I don't think of von Trier, even though some people definitely do. I don't think too much of him as like a provocateur.
No.
But this movie definitely feels like I've never seen shit like that before, you know? And like,
yeah,
that's not saying that that's not true. And I also think this movie, like, if you think of something like The Witch by Robert Eggers, did he not have maybe been influenced by the look of this film a little? They have similar vibes and
similar Defoes.
Yeah. He's not in that.
Am I thinking The Northman?
Yeah, you're thinking Northman. He's also in The Lighthouse.
Right.
But like, this movie does feel like a truly transgressive. You can't be categorized. It kind of defies like logic and reason among filmmaking. I don't know. It's weird to talk about.
It's closer to like a dark fairy tale than it is to a classic horror. And this might be a goofy comparison, but the opening scene made me think of this one Simpsons episode. I don't know if you remember. You know, a goofy Simpsons episode by the Antichrist. Do
you mean that episode where they totally just spoofed Antichrist the way they did with Cape Fear? And Maggie falls out the window slowly and just smashes her head on the...
You're watching it in the upside down. No, it was a Mr. Plow commercial where Homer tries to film this like commercial for a snowplower, but it's done in this... He takes it to this ad guy who does it in this black and white, slowed down, fucking super A24 art house style, where the snow globe crashes into the ground. And then a guy, like, it's so slow and meditative and kind of creepy, not too different from how Antichrist opens. And then, the baby dies. But so Simpsons, check it out.
Have you heard of it? It's a pretty good show, yeah.
It's no Melancholia, but it's up there. But the movie, much like Simpsons, definitely feels biblical right away, right? There's no doubt that it's full of this Catholic guilt. You don't find any religious undertones.
No.
Outside
In fact, so we're going to get to a point where you find something unintentionally funny in the film, which we can talk about when we get to it.
Oh, hell yeah.
My unintentionally funny moment in this movie is when he writes the triangle of her
he
feelings.
draws a pyramid.
And then at the top, at one point, he just writes like Satan ? Which I think is so hilarious because he's just kind of like, he's like a psychologist and he's like,
yes,
Satan's up to his old tricks again.
Well, she brings it up. I think that's why he writes it down. So Mr. Freud over here's got this Maslow's pyramid of needs, and he draws out.
He wants to find what is the thing that
base
she is
needs.
most afraid of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so somewhere he's got his name in the pyramid, and then she mentions that she feels like she's taken by the devil. So he writes Satan ? At the
Yeah, I just think it's, I don't know.
I mean,
I think
come
it's
on.
funny.
The cabin that they go to in the woods is called Eden. So they really try to ham-fist it in there.
Yeah, for sure.
Can
we, sorry. So we kind of mentioned what happens at the beginning of this movie. There's a very long, incredibly filmed scene with some unsimulated sex thrown in there too.
Speaking of, and I don't know how true this is, but that is not Mr. Willem Dafoe's real penis.
No, they wouldn't do that. It's replaced with pornographic actors, I thought.
They used it prosthetic, and whoever the actor was doesn't matter. But for one reason and one reason only, is because
Willem Dafoe's
Willem Dafoe's penis is too big. Which is comical because that prosthetic was already fucking huge. The hog on that thing. Sorry, I don't know why I'm yelling, but like, for Lars von Trier to be like, I'm sorry, Mr. Dafoe, you're gonna kill this lady, so we have to tape your shit down.
First
and
off,
stick a fake one on it.
Like, they also cannot ask two A-list actors to have unsimulated sex on film, for one.
Why?
But also, I bet Willem Dafoe probably volunteers.
Yes.
Just to be like, just so
authentic.
people can be like, I'm sorry, sir, it's too large. And he's like, that's what I thought.
That's what I thought.
I'll go back to my trainer.
Hell yeah. But then even the fake one they use is like comically, like cartoon dick. It's huge.
That scene of unsimulated sexual intercourse.
Yeah.
That is like 5 seconds into the movie.
Yeah.
Just immediately. Anyway, so let's talk about the plot. There's that whole like beginning sequence is just it's just like fucking work of art. Like, it's so incredibly filmed. It's this black and white, slow set to music. The child falls out the window. We've covered this, but like the child falls out the window and dies. They have a funeral, and then she's been grieving for a month. She's in the hospital. Defoe comes in and says like, "Oh, no, I want to treat you. I'm gonna Green Goblin this all up in you," and then takes her home. And there's quite a long sequence where they're just at the apartment.
Yes.
Just mourning,
Yeah.
And just doing the old psychology and mourning.
She's mourning
in increasingly strange
therapizing.
ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something about that whole sequence is really, it's really discomforting because I find, at least when I was watching it, like so many times in this movie, you're just kind of like, the camera is just not where I expect it to be looking. Like, it's just
great point.
It's moving a lot, and it's you know what I mean? It's very, very strange. And then it's interspersed with it, which in the opening sequence, it's so deliberate, and it's shot in slow motion.
Yeah.
Well, it's shot in like an incredibly high frame rate to make it like this incredibly glacial slow motion.
Yeah.
And it's just an incredible sequence. I cannot stress it enough. But then later it becomes this like handheld, really uncomfortable sequence in their apartment. And the guy, the cinematographer, he did Slumdog Millionaire.
Yeah.
His name is escaping me, but
Roger. Nope. We'll just call him that, but no disrespect. Sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, and I found, it's just very disorienting. And then they decide to go to the cabin.
I think, and it's a great choice that they did that handheld thing, because I felt so uncomfortable being part of that conversation where whole time we're basically screaming at the screen being like, don't therapize your wife,
Yeah.
you idiot.
Yeah.
Because you can see her declining into the worse. And, you
Yeah,
know, and it's
and-
that helplessness that you feel as an audience. And then you can kind of empathize with her being like, you about to get fucked up, shorty.
It's also like it's very dark and
Yeah.
like it's like these weird scenes where you can just like see their white bodies in the dark like moving, and she is like Gainsbourg, like the way she like moves, she's so like scrambly and frightening in a way, and
it's like it's one of those like that cat without hair.
Yeah, like there's a part where she like jumps on him and just is like ripping at his shorts to try and have sex with him and stuff, and it's just so like it's just so uncomfortable.
It's rough.
You know?
It's rough to watch.
And then so they decide to go to the woods.
Yeah.
I want to note that like between them they're on the train, and there's this sequence where Defoe tries to get her to kind of envision the fear of the woods and stuff, and there's all these like slow motion scenes of her like walking through.
Yeah,
I found that stuff really fucking cool. I think it's really amazing. There's a scene where she walks by the like foxhole and you just see her passing by it, and it's very calm. That whole sequence I think is really cool. Yeah.
The reason they take her back to that forest is part of his immersion therapy, where he's like, if I bring her into this environment where she was once with the child, maybe she'll get over her fear of being in the world, or, you know, touching grass and very mundane things that a person should be able to do.
Yeah.
And the way she depicts her fears, which then kind of, as I guess the Antichrist takes over her, or whatever you call it, depression, melancholia, grief, anger, rage, it's transformative in the way that you see her face change almost, and that happens a little bit down the line. But I just wanted to note the difference between this scene where she comes in terrified like a baby pigeon, to then like transforming into this phoenix who's just like skipping through the forest, no big deal.
It also keeps pace with all of these like very strange things happening in nature around them, like the acorns on the roof, and then like the deer with the fawn hanging out of it, and like the ticks on Willem Dafoe's hand or whatever. And I don't know, like she kind of seems to be okay with it and expectant of it, and then he seems to become more and more discomforted being out at Eden. Yeah. Which like you see, I think that kind of culminates with the fox. Now, do you want to talk about the fox?
Before we get to, oh my God, just the greatest fox in cinematic history. Before the fox, though, there is this moment where, like you pointed out, there's a lot of weird shit happening with nature. There's a bird that falls out of the sky, right? And then another bird picks at its head and eats it. There's a moment where both of them have a conversation about nature, and he asks her, like, are you afraid of nature? Or something to that effect. And she says, no, trees, whatever. And then, he means nature of man. Okay. So I thought that was a fucking sick way to introduce like behavior and an intention versus something you can't control, which is like the nature, like outside world nature itself.
Yeah. So. And she originally claims that like the reason they go there is because she claims that's the place where she feels the most fear.
Oh yeah.
Right. And but I think as the movie goes on, you're kind of like, you seem to be getting more comfortable out here in general, which is kind of affecting you, making you kind of stumble towards madness, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And all of those sequences, it was all these just like little things about this movie that I love. And there's there's like these shots of the forest like straight up that he intersperses. Yep. And which I think are just such cool images that he's managed to capture on film, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is the noisiest fucking cabin, bro. Like, why would they decide?
I would hate it there.
I would hate it there. Who goes into the forest to hear acorns hitting the roof for 17 hours a day, but it feels like nails on your forehead?
Yeah.
No wonder they're wanting the devil to take them. Please get me the fuck out of here. But there's at that point is when your favorite thing happens, where they're having that discussion about nature of man versus nature of God. And then when he, pulls out the big pyramid in his pants, from his notebook, and he scratches the word.
Willem Dafoe's pants.
Yeah, top of the pyramid, he scribbles the word Satan on there.
Satan. Yeah.
That's great. Can you say?
I think it's funny. I don't know why.
I have a request.
I know what you're gonna ask me.
What?
Do the Steve voice.
Oh my God,
Satan.
How do you know?
It's hard because
Is it the lust in my eyes for the Steve voice?
yeah, I can always tell that you want the Steve voice. Because
I am your wife,
I
Satan.
can tell that you want the Steve voice because you're always threatening me with an old timey drill, and you're just like, "This is going to your leg if you don't do the Steve voice." Okay. Satan. It's hard because like
it's different.
If I can just let you guys in on my art of being a professional impressionist,
Hell yeah.
it's hard because the Miranda has the Wanda, and that's so Satan is harder because it doesn't quite have the same pizzazz. Yeah,
unless
it's only
like
2 syllables. Miranda has 3.
You need like Beelzebub or something to really hit it.
Beelzebub. See, that's way better. You're totally
sick.
right.
Oh my God, this movie is fucking
okay.
Love it. There is a point where he writes the word Satan down, right? And then he scratches it off because he's like, no way.
Yeah.
No. My wife, totally normal. No big deal. That's when the next morning she wakes up and she smiles for the first time. At this point, we're like more than an hour into the movie. We're more than halfway in. And all you see is grief and rage and now you see a smiling Charlotte Gainsbourg, and that shit is the most chilling thing I've ever experienced.
Yeah.
What you smiling about, girl?
Yeah.
I am upset. And she says, "I love you, darling. I'm happy that you're here," to Willem Dafoe.
Which couldn't be more harrowing.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
At this point, I also want to say there is a quick flashback at the cabin where, you see her with the kid. Just for a moment, and you can see her partaking in she's an academic of some sort. She's writing a thesis
she's writing
paper,
a thesis on gynocide.
and you see a book with the letters gynocide on it.
Yeah.
Now that closes the first chapter before we embark upon chapter 2, Chaos
Reigns.
Oh,
yeah.
Love it so much. So Chaos Reigns. This is the point they introduced the fox.
Can I? Sorry, you have a better handle of the sequence of events here.
Yeah.
When do they have sex at the tree?
It's coming up.
Okay.
That's only in chapter 3.
That is.
We're coming to the end of chapter 2.
I just want to spoiler alert for the tree sex. That's one of the coolest fucking scenes
Tree
ever.
sex needs to be a goddamn poster.
It's the poster of the film.
It's fantastic. Yeah. It is. Oh my God! It's
one of in my opinion one of the most creative things I've ever seen on a film. Yeah.
We Christians love good hand.
I know, I'm just tired now. Yeah, everyone's probably asking is why does every movie have a fucking woman masturbating in the crook of a tree these days? Why do we have to? Come on, Netflix. Why do we have to see it?
Let me live my life. What is your problem?
It's from this film. They were inspired by Antichrist. There is everyone loves to watch someone J or D below a tree.
Yeah,
that's this life. Yeah,
that's the message of Eden.
And frankly, I'm tired of seeing the same old thing. So yeah.
This time I would like 16 hands.
Yeah. Why does that tree have hands in it in the new Judy Blume film?
Oh God, fucking Christ.
Okay, go on.
It's only
chaos is reigning.
There's that point when this fucking taxidermy frog makes its appearance.
Frog.
Sorry. Rip it.
Well, hold on. Just a quick note. Would it be better if it was a frog that said chaos reigns?
It would.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it? Because frogs.
Our
mind is mush. Frogs are more kind of slimy and grody compared to foxes. No, you don't expect a fox to say creepy things.
Frogs are definitely more. Ooh, that's tough though. Are frogs more chaotic in general?
Yeah, 100%. You don't want to see a frog in your bed, but a fox is okay.
Hey, you got a fox in my bed.
Yeah, a fox in your bed. Got
a fox beneath my tree. Gross.
This is so gross.
All right, chaos reigns. Let's pop it off.
Chaos reigns. So far, I have so much tension built up from watching this movie that I'm I can't, there's no expression on my face, but like moments of queasiness. I'm so serious, and my teeth, I can feel the stress in my teeth, that when that fox fucking emerges and then it says the words chaos reigns,
Yeah.
I burst out laughing so hard. I felt like I was mentally ill just kind of experiencing this fucking talking fox. I don't know if it's meant to be. It's definitely not meant to be a moment of levity. They don't want comedy in this thing.
I mean, it's funny because the movie is just so fucking hilarious the rest of the time that like you'd think that they wanted something serious, and instead it feels like the opposite.
It's Jonah Hill.
Guys, just to say, like after you see the fox in this movie, it's just a fucking barrel of laughs after this. Yeah, Can
I say, the Palm d'Or, they have a palm dog.
Palm dog, yeah. The fox didn't win. Though,
the
right?
fox lost the palm dog.
But it lost to
the dog from Up.
Right, yeah. That's some bullshit, man.
Which is so fucking bad. I don't see the dog from Up saying chaos reigns. That dog can't even talk.
Yeah.
Some bullshit.
Stupid
anyway,
ass dog.
I love the fox.
Yeah.
And that fox is the harbinger for what is to come in chapter 3, which is called genocide.
Yeah. Also, the fox
dynocide.
is eating itself. Let's not forget that. The fox is literally eating
disemboweled.
itself. I'm sure many people will disagree with me. I think the special effects and the props in this film are really good for a film from 2009.
For sure.
Like, I think the fox, I get that. I understand why you find it goofy. I think it does a really good job. I did not find it funny. I found it chilling.
Why don't you relax a little? Why don't you listen here, Chuckles?
You're a goofball.
I'm also glad that I saw this movie by myself when I first saw it, because I would.
Yeah, because you would have traumatized anyone else you wanted to watch it with.
I mean, I would have hated to watch it with someone who enjoyed it as much as I did, and then I ruined the experience for them by laughing my ass off.
Oh my god, I would have killed you.
You know what I mean? Yeah,
Yeah.
I would hate to be that person who's like, haha, talking fox.
Oh man, inappropriate laughter in the movie theater drives me absolutely insane.
But
yeah.
I definitely feel like it came from a place of weird stress relief or something. I just needed to fucking let it go for a second to be like, okay, gather my balls to watch the rest of this thing.
I just gotta mention that when I saw The Fabelmans last year,
another psychological horror.
Probably the second most disturbing film I've ever seen. There was these people who kept laughing at the worst times.
Oh, what the
And by worst times, I mean any time someone insulted the Steven Spielberg-esque character for being Jewish, they thought seemed to be hilarious.
It's a real couple of cool
And
kids.
it was like, guys, I don't know if I need to say this, but anti-Semitism really isn't very funny.
Not cool.
And
Hey, don't.
Although it's funny to think in that movie made by the guy who's making a movie about himself, who is himself Jewish,
Of course.
being wouldn't it be hilarious if they made an anti-Semitic crack? It's it was so strange.
Yeah.
Those people fucking sucked. It almost ruined
I mean,
my
of
experience of the movie, but
Yeah.
that's all right. Michelle Williams did the rest.
It was the fox. It was in the audience. Chaos reigns. Shut the fuck up, fox. God. It's great.
All right. Anyway, genocide.
Anyway, our boy Willem Dafoe finds a bunch of disturbing art in the cabin, right?
Yeah,
He's
some
discovered
dope-
his wife's
Some fucking
masterpiece.
sick art.
It's fantastic. All this imagery. They bring in those animals that they've been showing us throughout the movie.
The three beggars.
The three beggars, who are the fox, the
deer.
deer, and the crow.
They meet the crow later too.
They meet the crow later
They meet
as
the
well.
crow later.
Yeah.
The crow's coming back. Don't worry.
And I love that while she's doing research for this book and all the content that she's gathered for it, as the pages progress, it gets more and more convoluted to the point that it's just scribbles and you can't even understand her writing.
Yeah, it's very The Shining.
It's very The Shining.
Yeah.
And then there's mentions of witchcraft and he keeps trying to therapize this bitch, but it doesn't work.
Sorry, we keep saying gynocide. Can I be clear on what that is? Is that violence against women? Killing of women and girls as a social phenomenon. So the example they have in the film is the burning of witches.
There you go. Yeah. He sees that she's obviously just gone down this rabbit hole of madness. He goes back to the cabin to again therapize her. At which point she's like, okay, let's try the sex thing one more time. Okay, let's.
Can I point out one thing?
Yeah.
Not from the scene, but there's this line, which I gotta say, now that I think of it, is a little unintentionally funny because this is kind of a bad line.
Yeah.
Before they go to the cabin, Willem Dafoe is obviously not doing a good job as a therapist because he's not a good therapist.
Yeah.
But he's like, this isn't working. This is the stupidest thing I could do,
Yeah.
is to keep you here at the apartment. We should go to this cabin. And it's like, nope, buddy, that's the stupidest thing you could do.
That guy is just full of bad ideas,
Yeah.
man. Like, take his fucking degree license away.
Seriously.
Just nobody go get therapized by Green Goblin.
Did
It's
he
not going to
fucking-
work.
Did he fucking get a LinkedIn certificate for his therapy degree? Like, come on.
What?
Jesus.
Who allowed this guy to be in public? Anyway, he
Anyway.
should have fallen out the window.
So they try the sex thing one more
They
time.
try the sex thing, and this time she wants him to hit her. She keeps insisting, but hit me so that it hurts. He keeps refusing, and she's so angry. She says, well, then you don't love me. If you don't hit me, you don't love me. That's when that tree scene happens.
She runs off to the
she
tree.
runs off, and we get this imagery of them fornicating under a tree and eating.
She's masturbating under the tree, and then he comes and joins her, and then it pans back, and there's all these hands sticking out of
emerging
the
from
tree
roots.
trunk, which it's just such a fucking cool
Like
image,
visually
man.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
At that point, when they're doing the sex, when they're doing it in the tree, and the tree is called Eden, and obviously they don't have names. They're just he and she. It's like covered in biblical references, right, dude? And I know that depression takes a larger kind of room in the storytelling here, but it does. Like, there's a reason why they went to keep calling the movie Antichrist. It's because they want to hammer home the point that guilt should come from sex and pain should come from sex.
The problem I have with that is, like, I just didn't grow up religious, so I can't really relate to that. But I know I agree with you that there is some form of, like, Christian guilt infused in this film. I just have a hard time personally relating to that part of it.
And then just they keep all I mean, her book is called Gynocide, right? All of these references to burning of the witches and Salem and this and that.
Yeah, and like the whole like killing witches because it's against Christianity. The film's called Antichrist. There's like, I see what you mean. Yeah.
And also, they already have a child who dies.
Yeah.
So for them to engage in carnal activities when the movie opens, maybe that is also a form of punishment.
The big kind of reveal in this film is that she put her pleasure before
the safeguarding
her child, and that's why she punishes herself for it, right? Which is a very Catholic thing to get upset about. Yeah.
And now that is where my doubt arises about, does she do it intentionally or not? And we'll come to it. Okay. So right now they're fornicating under the tree. They go home and she's like, I got mine. What's next? She finds the autopsy report for her kid.
He confronts her with it.
Because
he's had it the whole time.
Yeah.
Yes. Showing that there's deformities in the child's feet. And then we see a picture that we had seen earlier. And then I never noticed the first time I saw this, but then we realized the shoes are on separately, on the wrong feet.
No.
And she
is the one putting the wrong shoe on the wrong foot by intention.
Yes. And if you'll recall, in the very opening scene, when Nick gets out of bed, you have a shot of his feet coming down to the floor, and there are shoes beside his bed, and they are mismatched. They are on the wrong side, sitting there like they are in your shoe rack on the wrong side.
Oh, damn.
Interesting. So she's been doing this unconsciously, or either unconsciously or consciously, but he confronts her about it.
I feel like she's definitely doing it consciously, whether or not she's driven by madness or illness. She is very aware that she's bringing harm to this child, almost to the point that towards the end, the movie pans where you kind of see that first scene again where they're having sex in the bathroom, and the camera pans to Charlotte Gainsborough's eyes, and she sees that the kid is falling out the window.
Yeah.
And she does nothing to stop it.
There's no reaction.
So she insinuating that she wants the kid to die. She's been bringing this kid
Or-
harm for years and years.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll get to it because there's a couple things that happen between now and then.
What do you mean?
So she...
Nothing uncool.
Remind me what happens from
So,
here. He confronts her.
He confronts her, and now she is so angry that he's confronted her.
She loses it.
She loses it. She comes in angry, and she ties him to the... Well, they're having sex. They're having sex on the floor.
They go to the shed, though.
They go to the shed,
Yeah.
and they're having sex on the floor, where they've just been talking about the autopsy report, like not even 30 seconds ago, that while she's on top of him, she gets off. Well, not gets off, but like she gets up. Maybe she gets up. I don't know. She gets up, grabs this huge piece of wood,
Dude,
and smashes his piece of wood. Man, she fucking...
the way this
boom.
also, like, the way this is filmed, she just, like,
Good God.
she fucking trucks his balls with this block of wood, and it's like,
And then
there's like this like clunk, and it's like, ooh,
he passes out.
yeah,
He absolutely passes out. Thank God.
as you would,
As you would.
Whoever you are, she fucking rocks him.
And then, dear audience, if you don't want to listen to the next 30 seconds, I fully understand. But
Jesus
here's what happens
Christ.
in great detail. Now that she's broken his dick and he's passed out, she climbs back up on him again and finishes him. Until he
ejaculates blood.
ejaculates blood.
Yeah. And
And then-
you see all of this. Like, this is
Yeah,
not like
in
hidden from,
great
this is like
detail.
all fucking
There
front
for
and
the
center.
audience.
Yeah.
Just no POV. Just
Yeah.
just a close
And then
up
if
action.
that isn't enough, she grabs that old timey drill and fucking drills through his leg and attaches a grindstone to his leg, a heavy grindstone.
so that he doesn't sprint into action and run
Yeah.
away from her because she seems okay.
Yeah, and then she throws the wrench away. She disappears the wrench that would release the grindstone from him. Yeah.
At this point, she's out again, wandering in the woods, just out of her mind. Poor Mr. Green Goblin comes to.
He wakes up with the worst hangover he's ever had in his
Ugh.
life. Yeah.
And even the way that he wakes up, that's how you know he's a good actor, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's not like he wakes up screaming or anything. His entire body shudders awake. And there's whimpering, and there's tears, and then there's this agonizing
It's just crazy.
cry.
It's crazy.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, not only do you not want to imagine what that pain feels like, but now that you get to see it in the way that he would experience it,
Yeah.
it's a lot.
And then he crawls out into the forest to the foxhole.
He cried. Yeah.
And where he finds a buried crow.
Yeah. There's
the
a
last
bunch of shit.
the last beggar, the last of the three beggars. He finds the crow and he kills the crow.
Well, he finds a crow.
Yeah.
And a crow makes a bunch of noise, giving away his hiding spot, which is a foxhole, that he obviously has no choice but to beat this crow to death. Just like she beat his dick to death, I guess. I don't know. Fucking man.
And then she finds him,
She finds him.
digs him up, and buries him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Drags him back to the shed with his leg still fucked up.
But she does. So she like digs him up and then kind of like collapses the hole on top of him and then sits for a bit and then kind of feels bad and then digs him up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of this happens in like 5 minutes.
Guys, Willem goes through a lot.
He is not having a good day. It's a real good, very
The
bad
most
day.
happens to him in this film. Yeah.
I
mean, and then she drags him back to the cabin.
Yeah.
And she can't find the wrench.
She can't find it.
She's forgotten what happened. She threw it under the
cabin itself.
Yeah.
So this is the point where again he hears a bird. This is
right.
the crow that
okay.
he hears from underneath the cabin. That's like, hey, my guy, this is probably where the wrench is. So you should punch a hole into the floorboard so you can find the wrench and free yourself from this. What do you call it?
It's like a grindstone.
Right.
Yeah, like for to sharpen tools.
Yeah.
It's like heavy. It looks like it's about like a foot in diameter.
They're caught in this back and forth still. She's still hanging around him like, what are you doing? Like, why are you trying to get away from me?
This is when she takes the scissors.
And she stabs him again.
First, she does something else.
What does she do?
She mutilates her genitals.
Oh, fuck.
That's this is really rough. This is where
Right.
she kind of has the vision of seeing Nick fall out the window while she's having sex,
Yep.
and to punish herself, she cuts off her clitoris.
Mm-hmm.
It pains me to just say that. It's so insane.
I
And
know.
yeah, and then
Oh, I fully just.
and then
blocked
she
that
stabs
out.
him with the scissors, I believe. And then honestly, I don't know exactly, like at this point
So,
in the film, it's just kind of like, how the fuck do you wrap this shit up?
well, he chokes her to death, and it's over
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
But good God, has this woman not been through enough?
Yeah.
That she's physically endured it. She's inflicted the same physical pain on him,
Yeah.
on her husband, only to. I guess this is why I brought up that redemption thing. Like, do they both not get the ending they wanted? He gets to treat her to death,
Yeah.
and she gets to be free of having to ever feel grief again.
Yeah.
And so that is why it feels like fulsome
Interesting.
and just like
Yeah.
they're in hell. They're in absolute hell from start to finish. But at least
Yeah.
now there's some release.
Yeah. True. And then I absolutely love the ending of this
the epilogue.
film. Yeah.
Yeah, tell me about it.
He wanders out into the forest to try and get back to civilization. He unwrenches himself from the grindstone, and then he wanders away. And then as he's on his way back to wherever,
Mm-hmm.
he stops. Well, first off, there's this great shot of him walking back along the trail, and then all of the kind of these like dead trees turn into the bodies of women,
Yeah.
which is really interesting. And then as he's walking, he sees these people coming through the trees at him, and they're all women dressed in
Faces.
like old-timey garb with all of their faces blurred out.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like hundreds of them, and they all just kind of walk over him and around him
Slowly up the hill.
up the
where
hill.
he's standing at the top
Yeah.
of it.
And then cut to black. That is-
Jesus Christ.
That's your movie,
Jesus,
folks.
Antichrist.
Yeah.
So that epilogue, and I had no memory of it. Why do you think they? I guess it's not consequential to know what these women look like because their faces are blurred out and they're just like en masse walking up a hill. Is it just to kind of show that there's been a lot of torture and genocide inflicted upon women in general?
I think that so going back to my original thesis that this film doesn't actually mean a lot. It doesn't mean that there's nothing in the film that doesn't mean anything.
Fair.
Like I
Totally,
think there
yeah.
are small thematic things. I just don't think the film is like thematically coherent. But this part about the gynocide and the way that he's walking through this old forest, and there's the forest itself turns to the dead bodies of women, much like the hands all coming out of the tree.
Yeah.
I have to assume are all women's hands, and they're somehow buried in this land due to this societal phenomenon of gynocide that has happened
Yeah.
throughout history, right?
Forever.
And then he sees all of these women that are faceless
Yeah.
coming towards him,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's getting to those same themes.
In that he is still like man is still favored to be the last one standing. Almost
He's
that
still like this man is still this like patriarchal force
Mm-hmm.
that women contend with all through the ages of society, kind of. Now, the problem with all of what I just said is that I don't think that those themes ever really come full circle.
Yeah.
We can sit here, like me and you can sit here and speculate about it, but
Yeah.
I truly don't think that they are fully fleshed out, because I think that they're in bits and pieces in this movie, and I think they're interesting themes, but I don't like.
And they don't need to be.
They're just not as focused.
Fair.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm not like this. If someone ever told you that Antichrist was here to make some like feminist message about gynocide, you would call them a psychopath, basically. And I don't think it is. I really don't think that it is. And I don't think, frankly, I don't think anyone should put that kind of pressure on this type of movie. I just don't think that you'll just come away disappointed. So yeah, I think it hints at those themes. I don't think it really completes them, but yeah.
And it, well, that's the beauty of an art house film, right? You can leave all of that shit to the viewer to interpret as they will.
Yeah.
Or take nothing or everything away from it.
The movie is just in pieces so good.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much to see within these small moments. You know, like that's kind of the takeaway.
Mm-hmm.
But just because it's technically sophisticated doesn't mean it has to be like the most thematically coherent piece of work ever.
Right.
I think it's okay to not be. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know?
You don't want to watch a movie like The Antichrist and be like, I'm going to have a philosophical pondering for 40 minutes like we did.
Maybe. You know what's funny, if I can shine a spotlight on my own bullshit for a second, is like I also kind of think that that's a way for me to excuse films with problematic themes
Mm-hmm.
and protect myself from having to have those films criticized, because I
Yeah.
think I feel similarly about something like Neon Demon.
Yeah.
And we probably have proof by going back and listening to that episode.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's mostly because it's like, to me, it's just not an all or nothing thing. You know,
Yeah.
there's a lot about these movies that are well worth watching. And if you don't like the graphic violence of them, that's also okay. If you don't like to see violence against women depicted in such a way, that's also fine. You know?
Yeah, definitely.
You know, like, 'cause,
Definitely.
like, no one is here.
This is not for everyone.
No one is here like claiming that like you got to watch this
God,
fucking
no.
thing.
Mm-mm.
You don't. You
No.
really don't.
You can sit this one out.
Yeah.
Confidently.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? Go watch Neon Demon. Go watch it twice.
But Neon Demon is a similarly disturbing film. You know, it's
Yeah.
not. I think it's. I mean, I have a real soft spot for Neon Demon, but like,
I mean, the degree of chaos that Antichrist presents, I would say it's much less.
yeah.
It's not mass market, but
Yeah.
you could take it and still have it stay with you for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Do you have any more that you think about this movie? I think I honestly think we've covered it like chaotically, but that this movie kind of warrants that a little, you know.
I think we had it chronologically. I don't think.
No, but like I just think that there's so much you could say about a film like this. And we really like this movie.
Yeah.
But I could totally see the other side of just being like, fuck this shit.
there are two large themes that we did without like pontifying too much on a movie like this. And when I say a movie like this, I mean a polarizing film
Mm-hmm.
where one camp is just like, you just want to see women get hurt. And that's why you make a movie like this, versus this is what depression looks like. And whether it's a man or a woman, in this instance, they happen to show it through the lens of a mother. So it had to show her be in pain, and it had to show her be like physically harmed. And that is where I feel like people lose the message a little bit, because it's so much more than physical harm. It's about all that mental torture that manifested in itself, that it is beyond her control.
Yeah.
What, is she not going to cut her clit off? Like, of course she is. She's fallen apart every 5 seconds, and then having to live with the guilt.
She's been through the worst thing.
Yeah.
You know.
So much that she had the child and put the kid through those similarly traumatizing experiences, right? Like making sure he never is able to walk right because she put his shoes on the wrong foot. And whether it's intentional or not, her mind is not all there. So for her to live through this life of like, I'm going to write a paper on genocide, I'm going to go around living my regular life with or without my kid being like, who knows how empty or like a husk of a woman she is before any of the shit even happened to her. But that is what is interesting to me, is that we don't even need that flashback into her life, because clearly she's fucking out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then for this man, her husband, to come in and make it 10 times worse by treating her as this thing that he can fix, when he is also in the same boat of like the grief of having lost a kid, whether or not he has depression as a result of it. It's like the blind leading the blind.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
it's
for sure.
so fucking bad, and it's just a train wreck.
When I think of that whole thing with Defoe's character and the paternalistic way he takes over her therapy and stuff, it makes me feel very icky. Like, it really does. That's why I thought it was like, when I thought of it being just like such an apt depiction of misogyny, I was just like, yeah, it makes me feel really gross. Like, it is really, it's it is gross.
Not once is the audience rooting for the guy.
Yeah.
Even though he's getting, his dick broken and like shit shoved in his leg, you're like, okay, I hope you make it out alive, but my guy, you're here because of you.
Kind of like, you're kind of like, you kind of deserve it.
You asked for it.
You dude.
Yeah.
Like I said, I made a joke of it earlier, but where he's like, oh, I should take you to an isolated cabin. It's like, you kind of are asking for it.
You're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's weird that movie makes you feel that way for this man, where you're just kind of like, well, yeah, you had it coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think of? I want to go back to the reception of this movie and the polarizing way it was received, and like when movies like this, and there have been plenty of movies in the subsequent 15 years that have faced accusations of whatever, sexism, misogyny, racism, all these kind of things. And I always think in those situations, when I'm giving movies like this the benefit of the doubt, I'm always like, well, for one, couple things. Movies take a really long time to make, and they're really hard, and they involve a lot of people. And if you're the director, it's probably all you think of for the weeks it takes to film the thing, and then the year possibly that it takes to edit it, right? And then it comes out, and say you're Lars von Trier, and everyone's like, well, you are a misogynist. And it's like, well, there are many other people involved with this film. People who greenlit it, people who financed it, the stars, all of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And while Lars von Trier is certainly the authorial voice as the writer-director, I'm always kind of doubtful when I hear those things, because I'm like, that's a very simple way of dismissing the movie.
Right.
And also with this movie, to me, it's so clearly a depiction of this man's pain turned into art, this personal experience turned into art, not personal experience or firsthand.
Yeah.
But I wonder, I don't know. I saw a really funny, quippy thing where someone said, couldn't you just tell the shit to your therapist or whatever?
Oh,
and I was like, yeah, but also people are inspired to make art by pain and experience.
Yeah.
And is it fair to dismiss it offhand if it's a person, do you know what I'm kind of getting at?
Yeah.
What do you think of that idea? Because lots of controversial and disturbing stuff has come out of that. And in some cases that has been accepted by society, and in other cases it hasn't,
The controversy is not, to me, the contents of the film so much as it is the takeaway of the voice, or the internet voice, that is what they ascribe to the film, if you know what I mean. For instance, the debate is this movie art horror or is this genius? Some venture to say it's neither. It is garbage.
You're looking at one. Not garbage, but I don't think it's either.
It's either they fall into you can't categorize it because it is a fucking state of mind. So it's just an experience that you take and it stays with you.
You're saying Antichrist is a state of mind more than a movie.
I'm saying Charlotte Gainsbourg specifically is a state of mind.
Certainly,
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So people either follow it as something that is, it's art and it's genius and it's a work, like you say, so much work goes into it. There's all these parties involved, so we have to give it credit where credit is due. And then there's others that if this movie never existed, that would be fine.
Yeah.
There is no real critique of is it feminist or is it misogynist? It doesn't matter. They're not even consuming it for what it makes them feel. They're kind of ascribing these things to it because of a scene or two things of action that happens, right?
Yeah.
They're taking it out of context and then maybe talking about it as there was self-harm depicted. That means this movie's encouraging everyone to commit self-harm.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. Otherwise, no movie would exist.
Sometimes that's the thing is sometimes those critiques I find just silly, because sometimes that's what the argument feels like is it depicts this thing.
Yeah.
So therefore it's pro this thing, and then it's kind of like, well, how ridiculous can you get with that though?
Yeah.
Like Spielberg isn't like pro Holocaust because he made Schindler's List.
Yeah, exactly.
Like and that's like straw manning a silly argument. I
Yeah.
get that, but that is also kind of like sometimes it's like sometimes you encounter these critiques of these things and you're just like, did you not think about this for like a minute? And it's the way of like accusing von Trier of misogyny because of this, I just find not very compelling,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean you have to fucking sit back and peel your eyes open and watch the movie and experience it. If you don't want to see it, you don't have to.
Yeah.
And if you're also like, if you're uncomfortable of this guy's fucking interpretation of depression, you fucking don't have to watch it.
Definitely stay away from it.
Yeah, but I'm also kind of like, people's experience that they turn into art is interesting to me, even if it's a difficult one, you know?
And it should be. This is a hard concept to talk about.
And the other thing too, speaking of all of the fucking people involved with making a film, it's actually very rare that you get a film that's so clearly personal.
Yeah.
You know, like you see movies that are like autobiographical and things like that, and those are really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But something that I find so unique and compelling about Antichrist is it's not autobiographical unless we have missed out on the greatest autobiography of all time. But it is like, it's a total artistic interpretation of a feeling. And I think that's fucking really actually amazing.
Mm.
Yeah. That's what compels me about the movie.
And
that's what is like kept it on my mind for so many years, you know? Yeah.
And it's not like I know a lot of people who maybe even agree with the fact that, yeah, Antichrist is a good movie. There are certain people from that group who do it to have an edgy take. Is that, oh, look at this gross movie, but I fucking love it. But maybe not for the right reasons, if you know what I mean.
No, maybe not.
Like leaning into the gore and violence as like a thing you enjoy more than it should repulse you. That is the takeaway from the film, is that this should make you feel not good. But the way that it's depicted, the way that it's put to screen from words, that is art.
Yeah.
It's done. It's so much of it is done tastefully, if I'm so bold to use that word. And it's not for the faint of heart. Definitely not for like regular viewing with the family. But
no, maybe not on Thanksgiving weekend, guys.
A movie like this, you're okay seeing it once because it stays with you for a long, long time. And I would have be remiss if I never watched it.
Yeah.
So yeah, overall, I'm so happy that I saw it. I'm glad that I got to partake in like this guy's vision of what it means to show that it feels like to be fucked up.
Yeah, and much like we mentioned it last week on Sex and the City, but like the other thing too about lots of von Trier's movies, and to be fair, like none of von Trier's movies are gonna crack like my top 30 favorite of all time.
Yeah,
I think he's a very talented filmmaker. I don't love everything he's done, but a lot of his stuff, I'm just kind of like, the guy is trying something. Yeah, and you gotta kind of be okay with that.
100%.
I kind of like that. Yeah. I don't kind of like that. I love that in filmmakers when I watch their movies. I'm like, they're fucking trying something here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not for mass consumption. By no means.
No. That's okay
Von
too.
Trier feels that
it's
way
totally
too.
okay.
Yeah. Oh,
all right. What a movie.
This is a loaded one.
Holy shit.
This is also a movie that I never want to take lightly and make fun of and just like throw shade at the goofy, takes that people have on it. It is jarring. I love that it makes people feel a certain way. I love it even more that it stays with them.
Yeah.
And that's what's a good indication of a movie. Right?
I also, on the other hand too, like I understand that people might find the self-seriousness of it funny. Like it is like
Chaos reigns.
Like it is over the top and insane and like something that I'm sure lots of really stoned people might throw on and be like, this will fucking fuck you up, man.
Jesus.
But that's fine. Like however you want to experience it. I get it. I take the movie seriously because I think it's a really interesting thing to talk about because we've talked about it for an hour and a half.
Oh shit.
But like, I don't know, everyone.
Yeah.
Guys, if I can end you, just stop with one thing.
Mm-hmm.
You can like whatever you want. All right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just turn it on.
And do the thing.
Stranger Things is coming out.
No, stop it. We should cut this podcast down to 66 minutes and 66 seconds.
That's the dumbest thing ever.
What the fuck? Folks,
Thank you for listening.
it's been the low ceiling.
We yet again did not say who we were nor what the show was.
I literally just said it.
Yeah, but we usually say it at the beginning. We haven't done that for the past few weeks. We're just too fucking in it. We just want to get into it. We want to talk about this shit.
I'm Bree.
Also, we're really disorganized.
And you're John.
I refuse to.
Can you?
You can't say my name for me, okay?
I'm John.
I'm John.
I'm fine. I'm Bree.
Thank you again for listening. Don't watch this movie. I love you. Bye.
Don't watch it. Don't watch it. Bye.